I am Regina Larco, and this is #Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters. You have been waiting for this one, and so have we. We are thrilled to share the story of Justice Center Hong Kong on the channel. They are committed to bringing equal access to justice for all, and today you learn how they do just that. Before we start, a huge thanks to you, our amazing listeners. You sharing about our podcast helps us to reach more people and grow our impact. This is the number one way to support us. Tell others about this podcast. Share your favorite episode with a friend. We could never grow this channel alone, and we are so very grateful that for this episode we get to team up with Honeycombers Hong Kong, who are dedicated to making an impact and to sharing their love for all things local with their audience around the globe. In the show notes of this episode, you will find an insightful Honeycombers feature article about the Justice Center, written by Honeycombers Junior Editor Fashila Kanaka. Make sure to read and share it too. And now, on to the episode. Today, you meet Lynette Nam. She is the Senior Legal Advisor at Justice Center Hong Kong. In this role, she works to advance the rights and protection of refugees and forced migrants in this city and around the Asia-Pacific region. She is privileged to hear the stories of strong and resilient people and work with them to help find safety and hope despite adversities. Lynette is very passionate about using the law to elevate those who are disadvantaged and using her networks to amplify marginalized voices. She says, and I'm going to quote you back now, Lynette, this was so beautiful, what you shared with me beforehand. She says, "I believe the way we treat the most marginalized members of our society is a reflection of our humanity and values." Lynette, welcome to #Impact Podcast. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Lynette, Justice Center is a nonprofit here in Hong Kong, and it's been on my radar for the longest time. I think ever since I started the podcast. But I'm really grateful to my listeners because they kept, as I asked them who should be on the show, they kept referring back to Justice Center and your amazing work. Do you want to walk us back what attracted you first to start working with Justice Center and what you're doing there to support the marginalized groups?
Yeah, sure. What attracted me to Justice Center, I think, is I suppose I need to take, 2 steps back to talk about what attracted me to this area of work in the first place. And I think it really goes back to my university days. And I was studying law at university, and I was studying law mainly because I come from an Asian family where parents expect the child to either study law or medicine when you do well enough in high school. So I found myself studying this law degree when I really wanted to be a journalist, say, or writer. And, it wasn't really something that spoke to me initially until I sat in on a course on refugee and immigration law. And this is in Australia. And at that point, there was the practice, and there still is a practice of off-sea immigration detention. And I started to learn about the laws and policies that facilitate this. And I realized that law is a tool, and it's a tool that could be used for oppression, but it can also be a tool that can be used for good and for change. And I realized then that the profession that I was falling into, that I enveloped myself within, was one that is both something that could be used dangerously or something that could be used positively and creatively and meaningfully. And I wanted it to be the latter. So when I finished my law degree, I set myself a goal, and I wanted to work within a sector where I felt like I could connect with people and where I could use law to affect positive change. And when I found myself in Hong Kong, I started looking around, and I realized what Justice Centre did and does fulfills a very important gap within Hong Kong. I think within Hong Kong, refugees and asylum seekers tend to live a fairly invisible existence in terms of the services that cater specifically for their needs, and the legal help available to them. It's just quite limited. And Justice Centre is a centre where our doors are open. People can come, receive the help that we can provide to them. We give them legal support from the day they step into Hong Kong until the day that they leave, and we ensure that the other aspects of their lives are also addressed as well. And there is such a human element to the work that we do. It was something that attracted me immediately. So I actually, when I first arrived in Hong Kong, I sent an email to Justice Centre volunteering my time on weekends, and they turned me down because they said, look, we only look for volunteers who are here full time and who can, at least commit to a certain duration, which I fully understand now, because I'm now in a position where, I handle recruitment as well. So we do get very passionate people who reach out to us offering their time on weekends, and it's something that obviously is difficult to facilitate. But eventually I stuck to it, and I was given an interview for a position, and here I am so many years later, working for the centre and seeing the value and the real human impact of the work that we do. So that's what keeps me here as well. Being able to use my legal skills, my experience within the law to help people and to get to know them, and to be just even a small part of a positive change within their lives, and for them to be able to step forward and take control again of their lives. It's something that's wholly fulfilling to me.
Yeah, and this really brings us to SDG 16. If you've been following #Impact Season 5, you know that we are addressing the Sustainable Development Goals this season. And Justice Centre is directly contributing to SDG 16, that is peace, justice, and strong institutions. And in particular, target, I looked that up, 16.3, to ensure equal access to justice for all. I think that always, these goals are so audacious, and they are so... it's so good to have this to-do list for the world, how to make a world a more fair and equal place. But I love to really see how does it come to life, how are organizations actually taking action. So when you're looking at this target 16.3, equal access to this legal support also for all. How do you at Justice Centre do that? Could you give us like a concrete case study or example how you would then, a case you're working on right now or in the past that you are free to share? I'm sure there are a lot of cases that you actually should not publicly share about, but is there maybe just a framework how you would work with refugees to help our listeners understand also what it actually is that you're doing?
Yeah. And thank you for pulling that into the goal. And I think it's one that we very firmly stand with and work towards. Access to justice is one thing. Equal access to justice is what we're trying to achieve. And also, an inclusive society as well. And I think when you start looking into how things are in Hong Kong, there is a whole lot of inequality and attitudes that are very much less than inclusive. And this applies as well to access to legal services. So there are many organizations doing very important work in providing access to justice within Hong Kong. But when, say, an asylum seeker arrives in Hong Kong, say you arrived in Hong Kong, and you arrive at the airport and you no, you can't go back to where you just fled from, and you just need a place of safety and safe haven. What do? There is no information. There is no hotline you can call, and there is no, this is the legal procedure that you need to follow. So what Justice Centre does is we provide information right from the get-go. We have information on an app. We also take calls from people when they first arrive to say, when they have no idea what's going on, to provide legal information and help, so that they're not immediately sent back to a place where they will be in danger. But that help continues all the way through to when we are able to finally meet them in person, understand their exact needs, understand what's happened, and why did they have to leave everything behind to, rebuild their lives in a foreign city. And we sit them down and assist to prepare their case, ensure that their story is told accurately in a way that will best address the legal criteria that will earn them the protection they need, and to, along the way, ensure that they have access to counseling if needed, they have access to housing, have access to food, have access to healthcare, and feel supported, and feel like they're part of a community the whole way along. And unfortunately, in Hong Kong, it is quite a long process. Initially, within the immigration decision-making, the success rate of an asylum claim is less than 1%. It's something like 0.45% at the moment. So you can imagine we have to also share this information when people first arrive. They ask us about the process, and the first thing we have to say is, less than 1% of people are successful before the immigration department. And it's likely you have to then go through the appeal process where there's also less than 1% of success. And then you might have to come before the High Court in judicial review proceedings. So managing that expectation is something that we do as well. But fortunately, within Justice Centre, our success rate is much higher. The people who we work with, tend to be recognized at a much higher rate. And out of all the cases that have been successful in Hong Kong, 1 out of 3 are Justice Centre clients. So in that, I think that gives some context to the amount of dedication our team has in terms of providing the best support that we can, and in terms of the impact of the work that we do in terms of just getting people to a very basic level of safety. But in terms of equal access to justice, there is a long way to go. But we try to do everything we can for each case that comes before us.
What an accomplishment. I mean, can we just take note of 1 in 3? Was that is... No, wait, how was that? I always mix up the numbers. Remind us of that again. I really want to repeat that. 1 in 3. And so... I mean, that must be so rewarding. I can imagine, even though the numbers, we're looking at the numbers and we're looking at the impact that you are making. And I loved that, how that number, when you go on your website, that I encourage everyone to do as they're heading over there to support your work. And you can really see that numbers go up, 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 up. The people that you supported and the impact that you made on just people that you worked with in 2020. So in 2020, you supported 285 individuals, made 19 asylum claim approvals possible. I mean, just knowing now how small the number actually is that would get through. Maybe if you would just see the number 19, it might not look much. But now if you know the context of it, that's actually, I mean, I'm amazed. That's 19 lives changed right there, right? How is that a motivation for you personally? Or how do you balance between, I guess, and I read that in a beautiful article, an interview that one of your former, was that an intern at your center did, where you said that the most challenging parts about your work, I guess, with these marginalized groups is that you're constantly balancing between sustaining hope and managing expectations. I guess not just theirs, but maybe also yours. So on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis, how do you cope?
Yeah, and I mean, you're quite right. You know, when you look at the number 19, it looks like quite a low number. But looking at the context within Hong Kong and the number of claims that actually are successful, you know, we are proud of that number. And every single one is a man, a woman, a child who is then able to go on and start thinking about how to move on and have safety and have that support to, you know, rebuild their lives and become their full potential. And I mean, I tend to step away from the numbers. I think what enriches my day to day within work, within the work that I do, and what really brings me back is the people that I meet, you know, the people that I work with. Our clients are some of the most resilient, strong, intelligent people that I have met, and they've overcome so much to be where they are, and they have to stay so strong for so long and remain so hopeful for so long in order to survive the system, you know, with the lack of better words, actually survive this system within Hong Kong. And it's a source of inspiration to me. You know, I think it teaches me how I want to be, you know, if I'm met with adversity. And I guess the thing that fulfills me the most is not only when we can share the good news and celebrate with people when they have been successful and they have gained the recognition that they need safety and protection, something very basic, but, you know, winning that is a win. But beyond that, you know, I see people who've come to us in a state of just unraveling, you know, people who are desperate, people who have experienced some of the most atrocious things you can think of, and who find it even difficult to speak, you know, and you meet with these people on a day-to-day basis sometimes, or at least weekly, to get to know, you know, what made them leave and how can we help you and support them through the process. And at the end of it, you know, they are able to step away from it and are able to regain their old identity back, be a confident person, seeing that change from someone who is still steep in the trauma that they experienced to someone who can step out of it and start thinking through what they want to do and their full potential is something that is so incredibly fulfilling. And that doesn't mean they need to be successful in their case. You know, I've worked with a woman who have experienced child abuse and then domestic violence and sexual abuse. And her passion is in poetry, but she never explored it. And within Hong Kong, and with the encouragement of our staff, she was able to engage in that aspect of her identity that she never found time and was, you know, just not in the right place to do in her home country. And within Hong Kong, she has used that as a form of expression, and has now won a poetry competition, and she has been asked to speak and read her poem out loud before an audience, something that she would have been terrified to do, but she can now confidently speak out about her past abuses and use it to inspire other women. So even though her case is still working its way through the system, just seeing that change is something that's incredible to me, and it's possibly that fulfills me the most, seeing people outside of the numbers, and seeing them become themselves again, or become who they could have been if everything that happened in their past hadn't happened to them. So I think that's what pulls me back, and that's what really keeps me in this line of work.
That's the impact you're already making. Right? I love how thank you so much for sharing this personal stories. I would love to hear that poem. Is there any chance we get to hear that poem somewhere? Was it recorded there that day?
Actually, there is an event coming up where there is a live poetry reading of it,
Yes.
something that I can share, but I think it might actually be in just a few weeks' time. So it might be too early for this podcast.
We will follow up with it. And, you know, maybe we can have some more stories like this in the future as well on a Justice Center podcast. I would love for it to come to life and really give this, as you said, these are the voices that are not heard. it's so important to give them the platform to share the stories. And Lynette, to me, I find it really moving how actually your passion that you shared beforehand, that maybe you were not keen to study law at first, you were more interested in journalism and this kind of communication side of things, but you are now actually, you are living this, right? I mean, you are engaged in these stories, and now you're sharing it with us and our listeners. And what is something that I think I need to understand better as well, and I'm sure our listeners too, is just to put ourselves in their shoes for a minute to really understand how is a day in a life of an asylum seeker in Hong Kong. And I love that you're regularly bringing this up with a campaign. And I'm very happy that our listeners are just in time to, if they're listening as we release this episode in October 2021, they have the chance to join this campaign. I don't want to, I want you to share more about it with our listeners, what it is all about, where people can really step into understanding certain challenges an asylum seeker faces in Hong Kong.
So we have an exciting campaign coming up, and it is going to be online throughout October. The campaign is called Hungry for Change, and within that campaign, we are inviting you and everyone within Hong Kong or elsewhere to step into the shoes of an asylum seeker within Hong Kong and live within the food budget that is given to someone who is seeking asylum in Hong Kong, and that is 40 Hong Kong dollars a day. And we invite and encourage you to live on that budget for 3 days in a row and share your experiences on social media as you try to live within that budget. And this campaign is really a way for us to raise awareness of the very, very limited social welfare provisions within Hong Kong and the forced poverty, really, that is imposed on people seeking protection within the city. And something that I don't think I mentioned before is that, when you are seeking asylum in Hong Kong, you are not allowed to work. So there's no way for you to support yourself and your family. And although many of the asylum seekers here are professionals, we work with people who are lawyers and journalists in their home country, are teachers, or are people within, who have skills who can contribute. They're not allowed to work within Hong Kong. And many of them, due to the circumstances from which they've fled, do not have access to their own bank accounts in their home country, or are otherwise, in Hong Kong and stranded without financial resources. So they are forced to live within the social welfare provisions provided by the Hong Kong government. And unfortunately, that works out to be 40 Hong Kong dollars a day for food. So yes, the Hungry for Change campaign invites you to take up that challenge, experience what it would be like, and share it with your friends and family. And as part of that, we would also encourage you to fundraise for our centre as well, and the social welfare work that we do in terms of helping people access just basic levels of social welfare. So not just access to food, but to housing, to healthcare, to education for children, and addressing the gaps that very much exist for asylum seekers in the city.
And to just for our listeners outside of Hong Kong, that 40 Hong Kong dollars translate to around $5 a day. And you have to know that Hong Kong is just such an expensive place to live. If you've never been in Hong Kong, you probably don't know how difficult it actually is to get by with this. No matter when you're listening to this, you can challenge yourself to that every day, and not just to the Hungry for Change. I actually love that tagline. Hungry for change. We're definitely hungry for change here at #Impact Podcast. But just in general, I think oftentimes we are so busy with ourselves that it's really hard to even understand what other people are going through, especially if we don't know anyone that is in that particular situation. So I think a lot of it is actually just raising awareness for it and hearing those stories from you, Lynette, from your team, from your beneficiaries. And that's why I'm also very grateful for the amazing team over at the Honeycombers to share in collaboration with Hashtag Impact another really touching and insightful article, how it is from the perspective of one of your beneficiaries, how it is for them here in Hong Kong. And I encourage everyone, I'm going to put it in the show notes so that you can go over and read that article as well, and head over to Justice Center and support. I mean, that's what you can do to make an impact here today. I want to really dig deeper here, Lynette, because I have heard you share now how you've come to start working for this organization. I hear you share what keeps you going. But what I was asked recently in an interview was, where does this unbroken optimism for actually being able to change the world come from? They asked me that. Because I know I'm like this hopeless optimist. I really believe in the good of people, and that the good would always win in the end, like in that fairy tale or in that perfect Hollywood movie where in the end everyone lives happily ever after. Of course, life is not like that, but I believe that there is really potential for everyone to contribute to making the world better. And what I came up with as a first, when I was asked that, I just had to think of my great-grandmother, because she was such an inspiration to me, and she was just this amazing, positive, kind person. And that brings me to something you shared with me beforehand about your biggest role model. And that is your dad, right?
Yeah.
How has your dad impacted you in being the person that you are today?
Yeah, no, thanks, Virginia. I think I might not have shared this with you, but my dad actually passed away last year very suddenly. And I think it's given me a lot of cause for reflection. And it has made me realize that all through my childhood, young adulthood, up until this very day, he has been my inspiration and my achievements. I do it because he has this sense of pride about me and supports me in everything that I do. But in terms of that optimism, he is an optimistic person. He was a very optimistic person. And the way that he looks at the world and everything that's bad within it, he is able to take all that and still exude a sense of, optimism about our day to day. And I guess I'm not expressing myself very well because it is quite an emotional topic for me when it comes to my dad. But what he did teach me is that, this is the one life that we have, and every moment that we have, we should live it, and we should live it with presence, and we should live it with meaning, and we shouldn't shy away from that. I think one thing that I now know, having, worked professionally for so long, is that life can drag you in all directions. And the easiest path to follow is sometimes not the most meaningful path or the path that most compels you. And it is difficult to keep chasing meaning and keep chasing value in your work. You have to forego security, stability. You have to forego what a lot of the time people see as traditional metrics of success in a career. But I think my dad allowed me in the way that he always supported me and always valued, my untraditional aspirations. He allowed me to explore a career path that is less than traditional, especially within an Asian society. So, he has and will always be a big inspiration to me.
I think we hardly ever take time to like really acknowledge that. Thank you for taking a moment to share that as well. I think this is something that no matter where you're listening to right now, and no matter on where, in which stage you are with your own change-making journey, I think we can all dig out so much of that from within us, right? We carry it with us. The answers are already there, I often feel. And maybe we are just making it more complicated because we are thinking too much. I know I'm like going totally off topic here now, but it's I know that this will resonate with our listeners to go deep as well within themselves. When we're looking at your work, though, is there something that for this year, and I mean now we're in year 2 of this pandemic, where you feel you set yourself maybe a little goal or an ambitious goal where you would love to see Justice Center go despite all the challenges, because I'm sure you have faced them as well. How you actually get to the people, how can you have these conversations? I can only imagine how many maybe courts were closed or delayed because there's pretty much you can blame everything on the pandemic, right? And all of a sudden like official offices are closed. Or also what I know of course impacted your work a lot is with the new legislation coming in. So moving forward, where do you see Justice Center go?
It has been quite a difficult couple of years for the centre. COVID, as you mentioned, has been extremely disruptive. We've had to pretty much remodel our services when we couldn't open our office due to public health restrictions. Right? So we've, looked to technological solutions there. It's been difficult with the new legislation that's come in August. It imposes some more procedural barriers to people seeking protection, and it also expands detention powers. And we've seen a corresponding increase in the use of immigration detention to detain asylum seekers in Hong Kong, and that's just where we're moving towards. So. Yes, within that context, and when you look at the bigger picture of the world as well, within our region, displacement coming out of Myanmar is increasing, not only with the Rohingyas, but with other ethnic communities all along the northern ends of Myanmar. And then you look more broadly to the situation in Afghanistan and the displacement situation there. It's hard to be optimistic. But just taking this all back to what we're trying to do within Hong Kong, we are trying to steer a steady ship for the people who do access our services. We want to provide the best quality legal services to the people who come to us. We want to look at alternative pathways to durable solutions for people within Hong Kong as well, knowing that it is a very protracted, indefinite wait for people here, especially with COVID and with travel restrictions. People here are stranded for much longer than you could imagine. We have families who've been in Hong Kong for decades, where the children were born in Hong Kong are now becoming adults and they don't know anything else but a life of displacement. So looking at alternative solutions to the traditional legal procedures. We are also looking to engage the refugee community more directly and actually focus on giving them a voice and giving them the platform in advocacy, in communications, in engaging with the broader public. We may know the law, but they are the experts when it comes to what it is like and the issues that they face and what needs to change. They are the experts. So I think one focus of the centre is to move towards giving them the microphone and letting them speak, and taking a step back and supporting that as well. So those are some of the directions that the centre is going towards. Obviously, preserving our services that we see as key in terms of addressing gaps, but, really bringing out the community advocacy that we see as important and somewhat lacking in this space.
Lynette, you probably know that every guest on Hashtag Impact has to go through the quick fire round.
Right.
And what that means is that I will give you 3 quick prompts and you can give me your 3 quick answers. Are you ready for this?
Sure, I think so.
Lynette, making an impact means?
Doing what you can and using your skills to do what you can for the people around you.
Who inspires you in the way they are tackling the Sustainable Development Goals?
I think one network that I am a part of is the Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network. And within that network, there is a growing movement and a specific emphasis placed on refugee leadership. And I think in terms of working towards an inclusive society, that is one of the most important things in terms of bringing out leaders from people with lived experiences. So, yeah. Let's just say what Apron is doing to bring out refugee leadership and bring that within the SDGs.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll put a link to the organization in the show notes as well. And now, last but not least, to encourage all our listeners that have been inspired by the stories you shared, what could everyone do right now to make the world a better place?
Right now, I think the first thing you can do is go onto the website of Justice Centre and sign on to be part of the conversation. Speak to us and learn about us, but more importantly, learn about the issues and experiences as they are experienced by the people who are forcibly displaced, and not just from mainstream media, and fact check everything that you see and be part of the conversation. And when you are at a dinner party and someone says something that doesn't seem quite right, correct them or challenge them to a conversation and a debate. I think many of you will agree. Misinformation is is a very serious issue in our world today, and is definitely an issue that in the end affects how we see refugees and forced migrants and the policies that then apply to them. So be part of that conversation, engage with us so you know the facts, and challenge anyone who is saying things that don't seem right.
I love that. And that's really something you can start with today, within the next conversation you're having. And if you're now on your phone, on your computer, it's very easy also to head over to the Justice Centre website. That is, can you remind us of the website, Lynette, so that everyone can head over there right now?
Yeah, sure. It's www.justicecentre.org.hk.
And I really love your sharings on social media as well. So make sure that you find Justice Centre Hong Kong on the socials as well. Where would you say you are most active? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Where are we sending people to now?
Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and Twitter. We have a very active communications officer that updates all those platforms regularly.
Dear listeners, wherever you are most active at, Justice Centre will be there. So make sure that you follow their journey. Make sure that you check out the Honeycombers article as well to hear, like Lynette said, so important to hear the stories from their beneficiaries as well. And Lynette, I'll be there always, you know it, with my support to making sure that we get those voices heard on the Justice Centre podcast coming to you in the future, so that we give more space to these stories. And today I just want to say a huge thanks for for taking the time to sharing your story with us, Lynette. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been fun chatting, and it's always good to let me vent and give me space to talk about things I care about. So thanks very much, Regina.
A big thanks to our guest Lynette from Justice Center Hong Kong, and also to her colleague Preston, who supported us with communications along the way. A special thanks goes to Elizabeth and Fashila from Honeycombers Hong Kong that made creating this episode such a rewarding experience for us here at Hashtag Impact. It was amazing working with you all, and I hope we can repeat it. The day we recorded was a hard day for me personally, as I had just received some devastating news from a friend in Austria. But as always, sitting down for that conversation, hearing about the work Lynette does, hearing why she does what she does, it gave me so much comfort and hope that we all have it within us to make decisions that will leave a positive mark in this world. Thank you for that, Lynette. If you feel inspired by what you heard, make sure to connect with Justice Center and check out that Honeycombers article as well. You find all the links in the show notes of this episode. Lastly, I'd love to invite you to join us over at #impact.com/club, where we meet once a month to share about our challenges as well as our wins on our own changemaker journey. It would be amazing to see you at our next virtual meetup. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Talk to you soon. Bye.